There is a psychological law, an invisible force that governs the value of a man in the eyes of others, and it is this: what is always available is taken for granted, and what is scarce becomes priceless. Too many give their energy away freely, hoping to be noticed, to be understood, to be appreciated. They flood the world with their presence and cry when they are met with silence. But the man who knows his worth does not chase, he withdraws. He understands the power of strategic absence. He knows that there is a deeper influence in making others feel your lack than your presence. Every moment you spend proving yourself to people who refuse to recognize your value is a moment stolen from your growth. You see, the world does not truly appreciate what it constantly has at its feet. Like the air we breathe, people fail to notice until it is gone. So if you want them to notice, if you want them to respect, then you must have the strength to disappear for a while. This is not to hurt them, this is to heal yourself. It is to reclaim your time, your focus, your dignity. The world chases what escapes it. It admires what it cannot easily access. The man who moves in and out of reach becomes a mystery, and what is mysterious becomes desired. When you are always available, you become like wallpaper, always there, always ignored. But remove yourself, and suddenly eyes turn, conversations shift, curiosity stirs. The absence becomes louder than presence ever was. This is not manipulation. This is a demonstration of your self-worth. It is the posture of a man who no longer needs external permission to exist boldly. A lion does not need to announce itself in the jungle. It is known by its presence, and feared by its silence. Similarly, you do not need to scream your value. You do not need to explain your worth. You need only to withdraw, and the right people will notice. The wrong people will not, and that is your blessing, that is your clarity. Most people do not lack talent. They lack courage, the courage to walk away, the courage to be missed, the courage to no longer fight for a seat at tables that insult their presence. But it is in the walking away that your true transformation begins. You start to realize that nothing is lost when you remove yourself. What is truly meant for you does not vanish in your absence, it waits. What fades was never yours to begin with. There is strength in solitude. There is revelation in silence. When you are always speaking, always present, always available, you drown in noise, both yours and theirs. But in your stillness, in your retreat, you discover your own thoughts again. You hear the voice of your own soul, and in that clarity you begin to build. You build your mind, you build your spirit. You build your vision, you come back stronger, sharper, unapologetically focused. But do not misunderstand. This absence is not an escape. It is a calculated move. It is not weakness. It is strength. It is not hiding. It is preparation. While they wonder where you went, you are working, you are reading, you are training, you are learning to master yourself, so you never have to be dependent on the validation of those who once overlooked you. Most will not understand your silence, and that is precisely why it is necessary. Because when you step back, people show their truth. Those who cared only for your energy, your attention, your availability, they will vanish. Let them. You are not here to entertain. You are here to evolve, and the higher you go, the quieter your surroundings must become. You cannot take everyone with you. You cannot be everything to everyone. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner your real journey begins. Every king had to disappear before he rose to power. Every warrior retreated before he returned victorious. You are no different. Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them assume. Your job is not to explain. Your job is to transform. And transformation requires a break in the pattern. It requires a pause, a silence, an absence that teaches both you and them the difference between who you were and who you are becoming. Most people stay visible out of fear. They fear being forgotten. They fear losing relevance. But you must understand, relevance that requires your constant presence is not real. It is a trap. True impact leaves an echo. And echoes grow in your absence. They replay your name in rooms you've never entered. But that only happens when you stop trying so hard to be seen, and instead start being someone worth remembering. The quiet worker becomes the loudest success story. The one who vanishes becomes the one they admire. The ghost becomes the legend, and yet none of this is possible without emotional discipline. To walk away, to stay silent, to not respond, to not react, this requires an inner fortitude stronger than iron, because everything in your flesh will want to speak, everything in your ego will want to defend, everything in your insecurity will want to chase, but the disciplined man has trained himself to resist. He does not move from emotion, he moves from vision. He is not guided by feelings, he is guided by principles. And that is why he always wins. Discipline is not the suppression of emotion, it is the mastery of it. When they insult, he smiles. When they doubt, he nods. When they walk away, he lets them go. He knows who he is. And that knowledge becomes his fortress. He does not need to prove, he does not need to beg, he does not need to convince. He simply improves, and in his improvement the world adjusts. They may not see it now. They may not value it now, but give it time. Once the seed is planted, growth is inevitable. But the seed does not shout to the soil. It simply does its work beneath the surface, quietly, consistently, powerfully. People will always test your boundaries. They will always challenge your silence. They will interpret your absence as weakness. Let them. What they cannot see, they cannot control, and what they cannot control, they fear. This fear is what makes them try to provoke you. They want to bring you back to a version of yourself that made them comfortable, but you've outgrown that. You no longer owe anyone the old you. You owe yourself a future only the disciplined can build. To pull back when everything in you wants to stay, to be still when everything in you wants to react, to say nothing when your mind is full of words. This is where men are made. This is where greatness is carved. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not in applause, but in silence. Not in the chase, but in the stillness of knowing you are already enough. You cannot create change in your life until you are willing to separate from what no longer serves your evolution. And often it is not what others are doing that blocks you. It is your own attachment to being seen, heard, and validated. Let that go, and you free yourself from every chain, the chain of approval, the chain of fear, the chain of trying to be everything to everyone. They cannot miss what you never take away. They cannot change how they treat you if you never change your patterns. So remove yourself, not to punish, not to manipulate, but to elevate. Your absence is your message. Your silence is your growth. Your distance is your decision. And it is in this decision that you begin to rise. Silence is a force few understand, but all feel. It does not raise its voice, yet it echoes. It does not chase attention, yet it demands it. The man who learns the discipline of silence gains more influence than the one who speaks endlessly in search of it. When you learn to be quiet, the world becomes loud in its response. Your withdrawal becomes the conversation. Your absence becomes the event. Your silence becomes the signal that something has shifted, and people always feel it before they understand it. The ordinary man talks too much. He explains, he complains, he justifies, he defends. He gives his energy away through his words, draining himself of mystery, power, and presence. He tries to win people over by drowning them in explanations. But the man of purpose, the man of clarity, the man who knows what he brings to the table, does not speak to convince. He speaks with precision, and when silence is more powerful, he chooses silence. He understands that people hear you louder when you stop talking. They begin to notice your patterns, your presence, your posture. Your energy speaks for you when your mouth stays closed. When you disappear, people are forced to confront the echo of your value. They look around and wonder where you went, and more importantly, why. They notice the lack of your voice, your ideas, your attention, and in that noticing, their perception shifts. Suddenly, you are no longer common. You are no longer taken for granted. You become rare, and rarity commands attention, not because it demands it, but because it withholds it. Most people fear being forgotten, but the wise man uses that fear to his advantage. He disappears intentionally, not to be forgotten, but to be remembered more powerfully. He lets others feel the absence of his presence so they can reevaluate the importance of it. He doesn't rush to remind people of who he is. He lets the silence do the reminding, and the silence always speaks louder than noise when it is backed by purpose. But understand this, silence is not about hiding. It is not the retreat of the weak. It is the arsenal of the wise. It is a weapon forged in discipline and awareness. It is chosen, not forced, and that choice separates the ordinary from the exceptional. The man who learns to master silence begins to observe instead of react. He studies, he listens, he analyzes. He becomes a master of energy. While others expose their insecurities with every word they speak, he grows more powerful by what he chooses not to say. Words are cheap. Attention is currency. Energy is sacred. You do not throw it around hoping someone will pick it up and give it back to you. You invest it where it returns value, and sometimes the greatest investment is silence. It creates space, space to grow, space to reflect, space to move undetected while others are busy broadcasting every step they take. You rise while they perform. You build while they talk. You evolve while they chase validation. In silence, you hear things you couldn't hear before, not from others but from within. You hear your convictions. You hear your purpose knocking louder than ever. You hear the lessons that chaos tried to bury. And once you hear them, you stop moving like the man who needed approval. You stop chasing conversations that go nowhere. You stop participating in cycles that never change. You withdraw not because you've given up, but because you've leveled up. You've seen too much, felt too much, and now you've learned. Silence is not absence, it's elevation. Now comes the next truth, the one they don't teach in schools, and few have the strength to embrace. Control is not found in dominance. It is found in detachment. The one who can detach from outcomes, from opinions, from chaos, becomes unshakable. He is not owned by emotion. He is not moved by noise. He does not give people power over his peace. He holds the reins of his focus with iron hands and walks away from anything that pulls him from his direction. Detachment is not coldness, it is clarity. It is knowing what deserves your energy and what doesn't. It is recognizing who adds to your growth and who subtracts from your strength. It is being so rooted in your purpose that you can love people without needing them. You can be kind without being used. You can listen without being pulled into confusion, and if necessary, you can walk away without bitterness, because you understand the price of your peace is far greater than the comfort of your attachment. When you are too emotionally tied to people, to opinions, to validation, you become easy to manipulate. They know exactly which button to push, and you respond every time. But the man who has trained his mind, who has stepped back long enough to see the bigger game, becomes untouchable. He watches the emotional bait being laid in front of him, and he walks right past it. He doesn't bite, he doesn't flinch, he does not fight where there is no prize. Control is not loud, it is subtle. It is the quiet refusal to engage in low battles. It is the calm decision to leave when the energy turns toxic. It is the firm silence that replaces arguments with exits. The man in control does not need to win every conversation. He needs only to win his direction. He does not stay to prove a point. He leaves to protect his peace, and in doing so, he becomes the one they cannot predict, cannot provoke, cannot pull into chaos. That is power, that is leadership, that is freedom. You cannot teach people how to respect you if you are always available for their disrespect. You cannot command authority while clinging to the approval of those who doubt you. You cannot walk in power while staying emotionally entangled with those who weaken you. You must rise, and rising means leaving things behind, emotions, attachments, habits, even people, not from hatred. but from purpose, from vision, from the knowledge that you were not made to survive in low-energy environments. You were made to ascend. When you remove yourself, you send a message. I will not be reduced to your level. I will not be dragged into your drama. I will not participate in my own devaluation. You either rise with me, or you watch me rise without you. That message doesn't need to be spoken. It is understood. It is felt, and it changes everything. Because when people can no longer predict your reaction, they start respecting your presence. When they realize they can't pull you back, they are forced to rise forward. And if they don't, they fall off. Either way, you win, because you did not allow attachment to block your ascension. Too many men lose themselves trying to be understood. They exhaust their energy proving, defending, explaining. But freedom is found in letting go of the need to be understood and choosing instead to be respected. Respect is not begged for. It is earned through self-discipline, through emotional control, through silence and detachment. It is earned when you stop chasing and start building, when you stop explaining and start walking away, when you stop fighting to be seen and start becoming so excellent they cannot ignore you, even if they try. You are not here to be accessible to everyone. You are here to fulfill a mission, and that mission demands a new version of you. A version that is not emotionally reactive, not addicted to attention, not desperate to be liked. A version that can disappear to rebuild, detach to grow, and walk away to rise. That version of you is not found in noise. It is found in silence. It is not found in the crowd. It is found in solitude. It is not found in chasing. It is found in becoming. Becoming the kind of man who is remembered in his absence more than others are in their presence. There will come a time when your silence becomes your strength, and your absence becomes your revolution. Not a revolution against others, but against the version of yourself that tolerated too much, gave too much, and received too little. Growth demands separation, not separation for the sake of pride, but separation for the sake of transformation. You cannot become something greater while clinging to what keeps you small. And sometimes that means walking away from rooms that used to feel like home, because the man you are becoming no longer fits in the conversations that used to excite you. He no longer aligns with the distractions that used to entertain him. His mind has shifted. His time has become sacred. His standards have outgrown his surroundings. This shift is not arrogance. It is awareness. When you finally begin to understand the price of your energy, you stop giving it to cheap distractions. You stop giving it to people who can't recognize its value. You stop negotiating with mediocrity. And you stop apologizing for evolving beyond it. Your time becomes currency. Your focus becomes your asset. Your attention becomes a filter, and through that filter, you begin to separate what adds to you from what depletes you. This is where true power begins, not in controlling others, but in controlling access to you. Not everyone deserves your energy. Not everyone qualifies for your presence. Not everyone should have a front row seat in your life. And when you finally realize this, you stop inviting everyone in. You stop explaining your worth. You stop proving your value. You let your absence speak. You let your elevation draw the line, and you become unavailable to anything that doesn't match your direction. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. When your life is led by vision, not emotion, you no longer allow sentiment to keep you stuck. You no longer confuse loyalty with bondage. You can love someone and still walk away. You can be loyal to your growth while saying goodbye to your history. You can honor your past without dragging it into your future. And the faster you accept this, the faster you rise. The man who is serious about his next level becomes unreachable to his old habits. He becomes a ghost to the conversations that once drained him. He stops entertaining the people who only knew the version of him that lived for approval. That version is gone, buried beneath the silence, replaced by a man who no longer performs, no longer pleads, no longer settles. A man who understands that if you want the world to change how it sees you, you must first change what you allow. This is the hidden truth. People don't change when you beg them to. They change when they are forced to face your absence. They change when they feel the cost of losing your energy. They change when your silence becomes a mirror reflecting their behavior. And not everyone will change. Some will fade, some will blame, some will slander your name because they can no longer manipulate your presence. Let them. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to your mission, to your evolution, to your calling, and sometimes to answer that calling, you must leave behind everything that made you feel comfortable but kept you from greatness. You must remove yourself from the noise long enough to hear your soul speak. You must break patterns that felt like home but secretly buried your potential. You must burn the bridges that lead back to lesser versions of yourself. And you must build a fortress around your focus, because your future depends on it. This new version of you cannot coexist with the habits that once enslaved you. He cannot thrive in the same chaos he used to tolerate. He cannot entertain the same distractions he once pursued. His path is narrow. His standards are high. His energy is protected, because he understands that growth is not only about what you reach for. It is about what you release. And when you release what no longer serves you, you create space for everything that will. The man who chooses discipline over distraction, purpose over pleasure, silence over noise, and detachment over neediness becomes a magnet for greatness. He no longer chases. He attracts. He no longer explains. He exemplifies. He no longer seeks to fit in. He builds his own table. His silence is not a void. It is a message. It says, I am not who I was. I no longer accept what I used to tolerate. I have leveled up, and access to me now requires more. Elevation demands boundaries. Not walls, but doors with locks, and you hold the key. You decide who enters, who stays, who exits. You decide what receives your time, what deserves your attention, and what earns your energy. This is not selfishness. This is strategy. The man who guards his energy guards his future. He understands that time is not just minutes. It is momentum, and every distraction is a thief of destiny. Every compromise is a delay. Every wrong conversation is a detour from purpose. So he no longer speaks unless it builds. He no longer entertains unless it adds value. He no longer remains unless the environment serves his direction. His life becomes a reflection of intention. His habits reflect discipline. His circle reflects elevation, and his silence reflects power. Let them wonder where you went. Let them question your silence. Let them feel the absence of the version of you that used to cater to their convenience, because in that silence something is growing, something is shifting, something is becoming undeniable, and when you return, not to them but to the world, you will not be the same. You will be sharper, clearer, stronger. You will walk differently, speak differently, move differently, because silence was not your hiding place. It was your training ground. You do not have to announce your transformation. You do not have to explain your process. Let your new habits do the speaking. Let your elevated standards make the statement. Let your focused energy make the noise. The ones who doubted you will feel it. The ones who dismissed you will regret it. The ones who never saw your worth will have no access to your new level, because this version of you will no longer beg to be seen. He will simply move in such power that no one can ignore him. You were never meant to be ordinary, but ordinariness is the natural outcome of emotional dependence, of chasing what you should be walking away from, of lowering yourself to remain accessible. But the moment you shift, truly shift, everything around you adjusts. The people you once needed begin to need you. The spaces you once begged to be part of start seeking your presence. The value they never saw becomes the value they can no longer afford to lose. But that shift only happens when you stop talking and start moving. When you stop explaining and start ascending. When you stop begging and start building. When you stop being accessible and start becoming irreplaceable. And you do that by guarding your silence, honoring your absence. and mastering your emotional detachment from everything that kept you at a lower level. You do not lose people when you evolve. You expose who was never meant to go with you. You do not lose love when you choose peace. You reveal who only loved you for your chaos. You do not lose opportunities when you step into your purpose. You simply trade lesser ones for those that finally match your calling. And you do not lose yourself when you detach from what no longer fits. You finally return to who you were always meant to be. Let them miss you. Let your silence echo louder than your presence ever did. Growth demands separation, and power is found in self. Mastery through discipline, detachment, and the decision to no longer chase what diminishes you. The moment you step back is the moment they start paying attention. The version of you they overlooked will become the version they admire from a distance. So rise without apology, evolve without explanation, and become so focused, so elevated, that your absence teaches them more than your presence ever could. You don't need to be seen to be unforgettable. Just become too valuable to be ignored.